distinguished guests and speakers and chief guest, our special guest, also panel of expert and senior teachers here. This is our third Leisure in Proctology session organized by the Society of Surgeons of Bangladesh. I am really grateful to our chief guest, special guest, and the panel of experts and all the speakers for 3 days for the continue the session. Also, thanks to the Dr. Kallankar for giving us to the time to continue his session. So we now this is the era of the leisure in proctology. That means painless proctology. The proctological disease may or may not be, or sometimes presented with painful condition. That's the horrible the patient. That's why the proctology in proctology the leisure comes into the point. Please unmute, please. So in the, today's session, our chief guest, Professor Manoj Porua, Vice Chancellor, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib Medical University. Our special guest, Professor A.Z.M. Mustaq Hussain Twin, Vice President, Society of Surgeons of Bangladesh. Our panel of experts, Professor M.A. Mujib, former Vice Chancellor and Professor of Surgery, BSMU, and former President, Society of Surgeons of Bangladesh. Professor Dr. S.M. Ashraf Ali, Principal and Professor and Head of the Department of Surgery, Marine City Medical College, Chittagong. Professor Dr. Mohammad Doirul Haq, Professor and Head of the Department, Sherebangla Medical College Hospital, Borishal. Professor Bimal Chandra Roy, Professor and Head of the Department, Rangpur Medical College, Rangpur. Our today's speaker, Dr. Ishtiaq Alam, he is the Assistant Professor of Surgery, Shohid Sohrawardi Medical College. His topics is pathophysiology of fistula in ano and open fistula treatment. And our another renowned foreign speaker is Dr. Kallankar. He is the head of the Department of Surgery, Amri Hospital, Mukundapur, Kolkata, India. His topic is Master Class in Leisure Fistula Treatment. So this session is presided by the Dr. Professor A.H.M. Tauhidul Alam, President, Society of Surgeons of Bangladesh. Everybody knows the fistula, open fistula treatment is more painful, and the patient does not go to the work many of days. So that's why there is a wound after fistulectomy, and in routine fistulectomy, intense pain for 3 to 4 weeks, no sitting for 4 weeks. Healing takes for near about 15 days, 1 month, 2 months, and partial stenosis sometimes in more than 50% cases, and patient may present with the constipation. So that's why leisure comes to the point, and it is 2 fiber already discussed. One is the radial fiber, another is the bare tip fiber. So in case of fistula, we use the radial fiber. In radial fiber, it is used to ablate the tract as it delivers energy in 360-degree fashion, and it's used for fistula in ano and pinoidal sinus. This is the fistula treatment. The fistula treatment done by the 2 procedures. One is the PHYLAC, that means fistula leisure closure. Another is it is in case of low variety. Another in case of high variety, DLPL. That means distal ligation and proximal leisure. So adoption of leisure into the proctology has revitalized in the field of proctology. So now this is we just start our session. Thank you very much from my side. Thank you very much. Now I would like to request Dr. Ishtiaq Alam to present his session. Please, Dr. Ishtiaq Alam. Dr. Ishtiaq.
Yes, thank you so much. It's a great privilege and honor for me to be able to present a case in front of all of this learned audience, and I pay my respects to the honorable chief guest and the special guest and my respected teachers in the expert panel, and also the learned audience. With your kind permission, I would like to start my presentation. I'm just sharing my screen. Well, the pathophysiology of fistula nano and open fistula treatment. I'm Dr. Ishtiaq Alam, and I am assistant professor of surgery in sorry for the disturbance, in Mitford Hospital. Okay, now introduction. Well, the fistula has been a long-term entity in disease process of humankind, as very literally beautifully put by William Shakespeare in his famous play All Is Well That Ends Well. What is it, my lord, my good lord, the king languishes of? A fistula, my lord. So the historical background of fistula dates way from 800 BC in Shuhrustra, who described fistulotomy, fistulectomy, and Khar Sutra, and also Hippocrates in 460 BC in his Hippocrates works. He described about seton, that is used horsehair, and John Arding in 1307 to 1392 he coined the term fistula. A definition and epidemiology. A fistula is a tract lined by epithelium connecting the anal canal to the skin of the perianal region. The incidence and prevalence true rate is unknown due to lack of documented data. Estimated annual incidence in USA is 2 per 10,000 cases per year. It's predominant in adults, and males are more prominent, affected, two times more than female. And fistulas of infancy and childhood are usually of congenital etiology. When dealing with the fistula, surgical anatomy needs to be known very precisely. There are 6 to 10 straight and branched anal glands, which open within the anal canals, crypts at the bottom of the anal canal, the crypts of Morgagni, found at the dentate line, and more are common in the posterior side. More than one gland may open into the same crypt, while half of the crypts may not have any communication with the gland. These tubular glands extend into the submucosa in a downward and outward fashion direction, directed towards with 2/3 of them entering into the internal sphincter. In addition, half of them extend as far as out the intersphincteric plane. Well, etiopathogenesis reveals that almost 90% cases are non-specific, that is of cryptoglandular, according to cryptoglandular theory. And the rest 10% have specific causes like inflammatory bowel disease, especially Crohn's disease, tuberculosis, actinomycosis, lymphogranuloma venerum, hidradenitis suppurativa, anal fissure, malignancy, carcinoma rectum, anal canal lymphoma, leukemia, radiation, post-surgical, like after hemorrhoidectomies, fissurectomy or episiotomy, and post-traumatic, like impalement on foreign body. Cryptoglandular theory, the relationship between the anorectal abscess and fistula. Well, this theory has been popularized by Eisenhammer and Parks, and the theory says that the anal crypts get blocked by liquid stool or perianal debris, and so the duct gets blocked, and the resulting in anal abscess, and which this abscess drains spontaneously or surgically into the perianal skin, resulting in the anal fistula. The predisposing factors are liquid stool entering into the duct, trauma, tobacco use, obesity, and cystic dilation of the duct, resulting in poor emptying. Well, not all cryptoglandular infections result in development of a fistula. In patients with anorectal abscess, 30 to 70% present with a concomitant fistula in ano, and in those who do not, 1/3 will be diagnosed with a fistula in the months to years after the abscess drains. This is the graphic representation of abscess correlating with fistula. where the abscesses may form in these areas, intersphincteric area or the perianal area, or in the ischiorectal fossa or in the supralevator space. And from those areas, it drains and forms these these fistulas: intersphincteric, transsphincteric, suprasphincteric, or extrasphincteric. We'll come to that later in the discussion. Classification. Although a lot of classifications have been proposed by a lot of scholars, but Parkes classification has stood the test of time. Parkes classification has divided fistulas into mainly 4 groups: intersphincteric, transsphincteric, supralevator or suprasphincteric, and extrasphincteric. Here are the pictures originally proposed by Parkes. There are also some additions to the Parkes which I have not included due to time constraint. These are now classification recently popularized. This is the MRI classification done in St. James Hospital, University Hospital in London. It says that fistulas are mainly of 5 types. Simple intersphincteric fistula, that's type 1. Type 2 is intersphincteric fistula with abscess or secondary tract within the intersphincteric space, that is type 2. Type 3 is transsphincteric fistula. Type 4 is transsphincteric fistula with abscess or secondary tract within the ischiorectal or ischioanal fossa. And type 5 is the fistula with translevator or supralevator involvement. Well, finally, we can classify the fistulas into broad categories: simple fistula and complex fistula. Simple fistulas are those which are intersphincteric and low transsphincteric, that involve less than 30% of the sphincter complex. And complex fistulas are the rest, that is transsphincteric fistulas that involve greater than 30% of the external sphincter, suprasphincteric, extrasphincteric, or horseshoe fistulas, anal fistulas associated with inflammatory bowel disease, radiation, malignancy, pre-existing incontinence, or chronic diarrhea, any anteriorly located fistula in female, and rectovaginal and rectourethral fistula. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, audible.
Yes, yes.
Continue.
Yeah, thank you. Now let's come to the clinical assessment of a fistula. A disease-specific history is very important. The history of previous anorectal abscess drained spontaneously or surgically. The patient may usually gives history of intermittent perianal swelling, pain, and discharge, which may be serous, purulent, or feculent. And it's very important to gather information about prior anal function and prior anorectal surgery and associated gastrointestinal, genitourinary, or gynecological pathology. Next comes the focused physical examination. Well, inspection of the perineum to look for the surgical scars, anorectal deformities, signs of perianal Crohn's disease, and the location of the external opening. Thank you, sir. Regarding the location of the external opening, a Goodsall's rule has been very popular. It states that if a transverse anal line joining the 2 ischial tuberosities, or if we assume that the anus is like a clock, the line joining the 3 to 9 or 9 o'clock line, it divides the anus into anterior and posterior halves. The anteriorly located fistulas open in a straight tract to the dentate line, while the posterior tracts open to the midline in a curved fashion. And although this rule has been very helpful, but it's accurate only in 60% of cases, and mostly in case of posterior tracts. And there are a few exceptions also, like anteriorly located tract, which is 3 centimeters away from the anal verge, is usually does not usually follow the straight tract. It curves to the posterior side and opens in the midline. And also in case of Crohn's disease or iatrogenic injuries, Goodsall's rule is not applicable. Next comes digital examination. We search for the internal opening by feeling in a tip of the finger, pit or maybe induration. The palpation of the tract, it's possible in case of low fistulas. The resting and squeeze pressure is very important to have a assumption of the patient's sphincter function and to exclude other pathologies. Anoscopy to visualize the internal opening if possible and to exclude other pathologies as well. Attempts to clinical assessment. Imaging is indicated only in recurrent cases where there are multiple external openings, unclear anatomy during office examination, or associated other pathologies. Imaging options are fistulogram, endoanal ultrasound, and MRI. Colonoscopies are selectively done in appropriate cases to rule out associated underlying pathology like inflammatory bowel disease or malignancy. And anal manometry is also done selectively in suspected premorbid conditions of sphincter function. Well, fistulography, it's been a traditional tool of imaging, but recently has fallen out of favor because its accuracy is only 16 to 50%, and it's difficult to relate the tract to the sphincter anatomy. Endoanal ultrasound, it's a very useful tool. Its accuracy is very high, 93%, to identify the internal opening. It's also can be used intraoperatively. But the downside of this is it's painful and discomfort to the patients can occur. Its main problem is it's operator dependent and results may be according to operators. There are also some limitations like the field of the probe is limited to 2 centimeters, and so the associated high tracts or abscess cavities may be missed. So limited use high transferic or transsphincteric or more complex fistulas. Sorry. MRI, although it has been considered the gold standard because it's multiplanar image and the fistula system in relation to the underlying anatomy of the sphincter muscles are clearly shown, as well as the secondary tracts and abscess cavities. And its sensitivity is very high. Primary tract sensitivity in detecting sensitivity is 86%. Detecting secondary tract is 91%. Horseshoe fistulas extension is 97%, but it's costly and it's not available in every place. Well, coming to the treatment part, the principles of fistula surgery is basically these four: elimination of the sepsis, closure of fistula tract, preservation of the patient's fecal continence and sphincter function, as well as minimizing the recurrence. So basically the surgeon is walking on a very fine line here between fistula and its cure. Because if he becomes too conservative, the fistula will persist and fistula may recur, but the patient's continence will be preserved. On the other hand, if the surgeon is too aggressive, there may be false passage, the fistula will heal, but the continence may be disturbed. So needs to be very careful. The surgical strategies available are basically divided into two types: sphincter cutting and sphincter preserving. Sphincter cutting is a fistulotomy and fistulectomy, and sphincter preserving options are endorectal advancement flap, sit-on, ligation of the intersphincteric fistula tract lift, fibrin glue, fistula plug, and some novel techniques like video-assisted anal fistula treatment, VAFT, FILAC, that is fistula laser closure, and ADSC, that is adipose-derived stem cell therapy. Well, perhaps this is the most important slide of my presentation. The factors influencing success and failure of a fistula surgery depends on three factors, basically: recurrence, incontinence, and delayed healing. Factors for recurrence depends on type and extension of the fistula, the lack of identification or lateral location of the internal opening, a previous fistula surgery, and surgeon's experience. Factors for incontinence are female sex, high anal fistula, type of surgery, and previous fistula surgery as well. Factors for delayed healing is basically cutting versus non-cutting. Cutting procedures heal a little bit later. So before embarking on definitive surgery, this is the one thing that we usually practice and has yielded very good results: the examination under anesthesia. It's usually done just prior to the definitive surgery, and it helps in definitive planning for the surgery. Under the anesthetist patient, the identification of internal opening is very critical to facilitate this, we inject through the external opening hydrogen peroxide with or without a dilute methylene blue. When there are multiple external openings, the injection needs to be furthest away. It needs to be started from furthest away to the most medial to the anal verge. After that, gentle, careful probing with a carved probe is usually successful in delineating the internal opening. Care must be taken, though, not to create a false passage. Sometimes we can get blocked while probing, and then it should not be pushed too hard in order to avoid the false passage. The ultimate choice of treatment will depend on the amount of sphincter involved in the fistula tract, whether we can go for cutting procedures or we need to save the sphincter. Patient preference will also influence the procedure choice, with most patients opting for sphincter preserving surgery. So now coming now to the first step, the first procedure, that is fistulotomy, lay open method. It's indicated mostly for simple fistulas, intersphincteric or low transsphincteric. Principles is identification of the tract by, as mentioned before, then incision of the tract, laying open it, and then curettage of the unhealthy granulation tissues inside, excision of a portion of the tract for biopsy if necessary, widening of the external wound to facilitate the proper drainage. Marsupialization of the wound edges has been practiced and by some, and it shows good results in terms of early wound healing and less pain, and afterwards gentle packing. Outcome, its recurrence rate has been shown in literatures for range from 0 to 7%, and incontinence disturbance, mainly minor like flatters or liquid stool, has been shown 0 to 49%. Fistulectomy. Conventional fistulectomy, to dissect the whole tract, leaving a big gap inside in the perineum, it has shown no advantage over fistulotomy regarding recurrence or incontinence. Moreover, it causes delayed wound healing and more pain. So it has also been less and less used in recent times. Although a few modifications has been done, fistulectomy with primary sphincter reconstruction, it's feasible option in experienced hands, and its results are comparable with fistulotomy. Core-out fistulectomy is a modification. It's for high transsphincteric fistulas. The tract is followed under direct vision, so false passages are not created, and the secondary tracts are transected and more easily seen, and the external sphincter muscles are spared by coring out and not dividing it. So it helps in preventing incontinence. Now, sit-on. Materials used are wire, non-absorbable sutures such as silk, vessel loops, and elastic catheters. Its purpose is the loose sit-ons. The sit-ons are of two types, loose and cutting sit-ons. Loose sit-ons' purpose is to promote drainage and fibrosis of fistula tract. It facilitates an easy identification of internal opening during the future definitive treatment. And this can be progressively tightened over time to convert it into a cutting sit-on and act as a bridge to stage fistulotomy. Cutting sit-on is commonly used in complex fistulas. Divide the muscle slowly to produce a gradual fistulotomy. It's like a cold metal wire dividing piece of ice. Recurrence rate is 0 to 18%. Disturbance of fine control is common, and major incontinence rate is approximately 10%. Chemical sit-on, like Karsutra, described by Suhutra in Indian subcontinent, it's popular. It's and also there, excuse me, and some medicated sit-ons have also been used. These are coated with layers of latex and plant extracts. Strong alkaline outer layer cut through the tissue at a rate of 1 centimeter every 6 days. But there occurs tissue reaction, and sometimes abscess may also occur. So it's painful, and evidence of recurrence and healing rate remain inconclusive. Endorectal advancement flap. It's a well it has been regularly used in the Western world, basically, for high transsphincteric or suprasphincteric fistulas. Reports indicate the healing rate is 66 to 87% for cryptoglandular fistula. Factor associated failed repair are high tension and small size of the flap, prior radiation, underlying Crohn's disease, active proctitis, rectovaginal fistula, obesity, and number of previously attempted repairs. And mild to moderate incontinence is reported up to 35% of patients. Well, the procedure is not very complicated. The flap is raised just distal to the internal opening, 5 to 10 millimeters, and mucosa submucosa, and as the picture shows, mucosa submucosa and a few fibers of internal sphincter is elevated, and it's brought down beyond the internal sphincter. The internal sphincter is closed with interrupted sutures, and then the sphincter containing the internal opening containing part of the flap is then excised, and then the flap is sutured to the defect. Ligation of intersphincteric fistula tract lift has been proposed by Arun Rajanasakul of Thailand in 2007 and has been popularized since then. It may be used for both simple and complex transsphincteric fistulas. The classic lift procedure described by Dr. Arun is involves suture closure and division of the fistula tract in the intersphincteric plane. Here, the internal opening is not dealt with, but the fistula tract is ligated and divided in the intersphincteric plane. Modifications have been made to lift procedure that include omission of the fistula tract, excision of the lateral aspect of the tract, and combined use of a CTUM, lift plus, or fistula plug, it's called lift plug, or transposition of a biological mesh, which is called BioLift. Results have shown that healing is in 61 to 94% patients in 4 to 8 weeks. But a few factors are associated for its failure, like fistula tract length more than 3 centimeters, previous procedures to eradicate fistula, and obesity has been associated with its failure. Fibrin glue and fistula plug. According to the clinical practice guidelines for the management of anorectal abscess, fistula, inano, and rectovaginal fistula of the American Society of Colon and Rectal Surgeons, published in 2018, both fibrin glue and fistula plug has been deemed to be relatively ineffective in the management of fistula inano. Both have high recurrence rates with long-term healing rates around 50%. So I'm not going to go into details about these two. There are some novel techniques have been developed for treatment, like VAFT or PHYLAC and DLPL and ADSC, the stem cell therapy. All have shown variable degree of promising results in small and short-term studies, but large randomized controlled trials emphasizing on the long-term outcomes in terms of healing and recurrence are required to recommend them in current routine practice. So the take-home message is the precise knowledge of surgical anatomy with expertise in identification of internal sphincter is critical for successful fistula surgery. Meticulous clinical examination with examination and anesthesia is sufficient for most cases, while imaging modalities are reserved for complex and recurrent cases. Fistulotomy is recommended for simple low fistulas, while sphincter sparing procedures are applicable for all other complex cases, either singly or in combination. So as yet, there is no gold standard treatment for fistula surgery. And finally, it's the complexity of the fistula and the expertise of the surgeon that are the two primary factors determining the success or failure of a fistula surgery. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ishtiaq Alam. He's the colorectal surgeon and assistant professor of surgery, Midford Hospital. Thank you very much for elaborate presentation. Now I would like to request Dr. Kallankar. He's the pioneer in laser surgery. He's the head of the department, Amri Hospital, Mukundapur, Kolkata. Dr. Kallankar, please. Today's he's the third session in the laser proctology.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for arranging my third session. I'm delighted to be with you tonight. My previous speaker has spoken extensively.
Unmute, please. Unmute, please. Dr. Kollankar, unmute, please. You're muted.
We cannot hear you.
Unmute, please. Dr. Yes.
এখন শুনতে পাচ্ছেন? এখন শুনতে পাচ্ছেন?
Yes, এখন শুনতে পাচ্ছি. Yes.
Uh,
Just I interrupt. There are so many speaker audience from the Indonesia, so that's why we take it in a English version.
English, okay, very good. And also, I shall like to inform you, my friend Kutub, Professor Kutub from Egypt has also joined today.
Yes, yes.
If you see in the list that you will find that Professor Kutub, he is a very senior colorectal surgeon in Egypt. He has joined today.
Thank you, Dr. Kutub.
And he has come to my place in AMRI Mukundapur, and he has also started last 2 years. He is doing laser surgery in Cairo and in Fayoum in Egypt. I have visited his place also. So
Okay,
today my
thank you.
topic
Thank you very much.
today my topic is about fistula, the laser surgery for fistula. I shall try to show you quite a lot of videos. Go through the videos. I shall try to give an impression how it is being done. There are definitely some limitations in it. We shall discuss about the limitations also. Let me share my screen now. Laser treatment for fistulae adeno. It's a sphincter saving approach. The most important thing. Just a minute. Before I push on to the fistula, I just want to share you some points in the laser machine also. I've already spoken on my first presentation about the laser machine. Laser machine is a very simple thing. It's just like a transistor. It has got a foot piece, just we are using it during our diathermy machine. We have a foot piece. This machine has also a foot piece. When we operate with the help of, there is a power cord. Now there is some in an emergency, you can stop the machine with that red thing. It has a very nice screen. With the help of that screen, you can see how many wattage you are giving. This machine has got wattage from 1 watt to 15 watt. This importance of the wattage is that we do fistula for laser with the help of laser around 10 to 12 wattage. So the wattage is very important for the machine. This is the place where we attach the laser fiber. There is a radial fiber. The fiber that we use for the fistula is totally a different fiber from the fiber we use for the fissure or the hemorrhoids, which I have shown you in the last week. This is a pen drive where the software of the machine is there. And this software is upgradable. With time, the company is upgrading the software. Initially, only endovascular was there, later on proctology, now even gynecology, spine surgery, ENT has been included, at least in India. Now, this is the screen. I shall show you the screen. The screen is very important. You see in the screen, there is vascular surgery and proctology. In the modern machines that they are supplying, you will get the ENT, gynecology, and other aspects also, which are present in my country. Now, in proctology, there will be choice that whether you can do with the help of whether you are doing fistula, whether doing hemorrhoids, the choice is there. So when you click on that choice, you will get the settings for the fistula. Fistula we do between 10 to 12 wattage. Hemorrhoids, I have told you that we do it at 8 watts, fissure at 7.5 wattage. So this wattage is very important for you to remember. Now, highlights of the machine. This is I told you this is just like a transistor, only 2.5 kg. Machine has got 1 to 15 wattage, and there is a big LCD screen. It's a touch screen. You can change your wattage very easily on this touch screen. So this is all about the simple laser machine, which is only 2.5 kg weight. Now coming to the fistula, already Dr. Alam, my previous speaker, he has given an extensive, very lucid presentation on fistula. And he has already mentioned that there are two main varieties of fistula, cryptoglandular and non-cryptoglandular. Now, etiology has been already described in the cryptoglandular. There is infection in the cryptoglandular space. Now that when this abscess forms, this abscess either spontaneously drains out or it gets drained or ruptured either by the surgeon's scalpel. Now this, when it ruptures spontaneously or it is taken out by the surgeon, that forms the track. Now, depending upon what type of track it forms, we follow the Perks classification. Modern in the MRI, a different classification is followed, but still when we speak with each other, we describe the Perks classification. Now, there are other secondary fistulas due to Crohn's disease, tuberculosis, lymphogranular venereal, malignancy, trauma. These cannot be treated with laser. So first contraindication to treat fistula with laser is the secondary fistula. Please don't try any secondary fistula with laser. So first contraindication is this point. Now this is the Perks classification: intersphincteric, transsphincteric, suprasphincteric. Now coming to the history of fistula, already Dr. Alam has told, Kharsutra, he started during that period around long time back in Sushruta Samhita. It was mentioned how to treat fistula. In Kharsutra, they make chemical fibers, chemicals which they extract from different plants. They put it on the sutures. Then they act as chemical cetons. And those are being used. These are in use for 2,500 years. I have been to some of the Ayurvedic hospitals in India. I've seen that they have got boxes because it takes 18 layers of chemicals has to be applied on that thread. Then all the chemicals are extracted from plants, and there is a box. Inside that box, that sutures are kept, and to prepare one suture, it takes a month to get a proper suture. Now, this is a very interesting fact. Sir Lokat Mamadi, a very renowned surgeon, in his paper in 1929, has mentioned this. Louis XIV was operated upon for fistula in 1687. History records that his surgeon received a fee of 6,000 pounds in those days. So it would seem that the fees of proctologists have considerably diminished since that golden age. Probably 6,000 pounds was the highest fees ever a surgeon has received during those days. Even today, I don't think any one of us will ever think that getting 6,000 pounds to treat a fistula. So how important is the fistula? That shows it was so costly in those days to get treated for fistula by a surgeon. So methods for treatment of anal fistula is various, because none of the methods gives 100% guaranteed results. Because none of the methods we have achieved 100% result. You cannot tell your patients that I'm guaranteeing you that this method you will follow and you will have 100% result. Each method has its own positive sides own negative sides. Some methods are easily reproducible, like conventional open or fistula tract. Set-on lift is an excellent technique introduced from Thailand, introduced from 2007 onwards. Fibrin glue, WAFT. Now we are using laser fistula closer. I shall discuss more extensively on the laser from the next. So this is the machine which I've already shown you. Now this is the fiber. This is a totally a different fiber from the hemorrhoids fiber. That hemorrhoids we use reactive fiber, but for fistula we use radial fiber. In the radial fiber, if you see it properly, you will find that every 1 centimeter is marked. Now at the tip there is a glass tip, and the laser energy comes out in 360-degree from the tip. In reactive fiber for hemorrhoids, the energy was coming out in one single direction. But for radial fiber, the energy is coming out in 360-degree. So this is the main importance of the radial fiber, because so that it can ablate the whole tract. All the walls of the tract receive the laser energy. There are two main methods by which we are treating fistula. One is PhyLac, another is the DLPL. I am not going into details how to clinically examine a fistula patient, how to do what pre-op investigations will be required. I'm skipping those areas because already Dr. Alam has told those points very nicely. This is a PhyLac with mucosal flap closer. This is a transsphincteric fistula. The patient demanded from me that I don't want any surgical wound outside. That was his demand from me. So I did a submucosal flap to close the internal opening. I raised a flap. I first injected cyclokinase adrenaline to lift up the mucosa. Now the mucosa with part of the few fibers of the internal sphincter was raised. Internal opening was excised. Now I covered the internal opening with the mucosal flap. This is a very good technique, but you have sometimes bleeding occurs during doing while you try to raise the flap. But the main advantage is that if you combine this technique, closing the internal opening with submucosal flap along with laser, there will be no surgical wound outside.
Sure.
Now the internal opening has been closed with the submucosal flap. Now it is the turn for the laser fiber to be introduced. This is the laser fiber that has been introduced. Now you give around 10 watts of energy per second. You give, and every millimeter, every second you withdraw the fiber 1 millimeter. So 10 joules of energy is given at every millimeter. So if it is a 10 centimeter tract, the patient will receive 100 joules of energy, 1000 joules of energy. If it's a 10 centimeter, it is a 1 centimeter, then 100 joules of energy. So every millimeter we are withdrawing, and there finishes. You see, there is no surgical wound as such outside. The internal opening has been closed with the submucosal flap. So the patient compliance is very good in this situation. He will not complain of very great postoperative pain, because this patient insisted on this technique because I still remember him 2 years, it was done around 2.5 years back. He was insisting that he will go for a vacation after 18 days of the surgery. So he wanted something where within 18 days his fistula will be completely healed. So we discussed, and I've chosen this method for him. And I know that he had a very good postoperative recovery and he could go for his vacation. So another important technique is DLPL, distal laser with proximal ligation. It's a diode laser 1470 nanometer wavelength, radial fiber either 400 or 600 micron radial laser emerging fiber. You have to identify the track, the inner opening and the outer opening. You put hydrogen peroxide and methylene blue to identify. Then dissect the track in between the external and the internal sphincteric plane. Very important, you are dissecting the external and the internal sphincteric plane. Ligate the track near the mucosa, disconnect the track. Now rest of the track, till the external opening, you just repeat what I have shown you with the laser during the Phylac procedure. I shall show you some way. This is nothing but a modification of the lift procedure. What Dr. Rozanakulu was doing, he was curating the rest of the track, keeping a outer opening bigger so that exudate can come out, but instead of that, we are giving laser energy inside the track. You watch this video. This is another. You see, this is a long transsphincteric. The external opening is far behind. So in the intersphincteric groove, I've identified the external opening. I've identified the internal opening. I'm dissecting in the intersphincteric groove. So you dissect in the intersphincteric groove, you get the track, then put a right angle. Just way we dissect our cystic duct or cystic artery, we pass the right angle. In the similar fashion, the right angle is passed surrounding the track, pass the vicryl. I use 20 vicryl, like double ligate towards the mucosal side, then disconnect the track. The track has been disconnected. Now I take up the laser. (12 wattage) machine is at 12 wattage.